Hola, hola a todos. Damas y caballeros, bienvenidos a esta charla en sujeto de nodes. Mi nombre es Andreas M. Antonopoulos. Oh wait, okay, I forgot to plug in my microphone and then I forgot to speak English. Listen, I've spent all morning finishing up the translation of the third volume of the Internet of Money, El Internet del Dinero Volumen 3, which I'm so excited about. Listen, it just went up on the shop. It's been a multi-month exercise, and I noticed there's lots of you who noticed it on Twitter and are in the chat. So bienvenidos. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for attending this live stream. We're going to be talking about nodes today, and we're going to be talking about a variety of different types of nodes. So remember, questions are on the Slido, and we already have a lot of questions. This unfortunately got rescheduled when we had some internet problems a couple weeks back, and then, as you probably noticed, I've now made it a habit of forgetting to plug in my microphone when I go on air. Allow me to demonstrate. You see, I have to plug this in, and when I get up to go get some water or something, I unplug myself, and then I forget to plug back in, and I start talking really excited, sometimes in a different language, and then I realize, because you're all screaming on the chat, that there's no audio. So thank you so much for your patience. Kalispera, Nico. We're going to do lots of different languages today, and welcome. Welcome. If you haven't yet asked your question, go to slido.com and put in the Slido code NODE, N-O-D-E, and you will be able to see all of the questions that are up there already. Now, keep in mind, we already have, I think, more than 40 questions, and I'm only going to be able to answer about a dozen or so. So it's going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of competition. And I've got some help making sure we go through the questions and try to prioritize the ones that make most sense given the context of what we're talking about, the ones that are most clearly on topic, and the ones that best express the question. So if you have a pressing question, before you go and add it to the Slido, consider instead upvoting an existing question that comes close enough, because otherwise you run the risk of splitting the votes and having us miss it, really, and not answering a very good question. So thank you all for coming. And I'd like to especially thank all of you who are regulars on this channel and regulars at the live stream, and of course those who are taking on the very difficult role of being moderators in a furious chat where hundreds of people are jumping in and exchanging questions and making comments and perhaps doing little emoji storms. Yeah, you know it. So thank you so much for helping out with the moderation. We've got 500 people on the stream right now, a very nice start, and we'll get to our first question in just a second. So let's see. First question is, what is a node? Please explain what Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Lightning nodes are. How are they alike, and how are they different? Why would I want to run a node? Is it profitable? That's a great question to start. It's got multiple different parts, so let's dive right in. So the word node comes from computer networking. A node is a computer that participates in a network. More broadly, it comes from math, and it comes from graph theory. A node is part of a graph. Graphs are made of nodes and edges. And so basically a node is a point in the network. In practical terms, it's a computer, and it's connected to the internet, and it participates in the peer-to-peer network. So when we say a Bitcoin node, what we mean is A computer that is participating in the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. When we say an Ethereum node, we mean a computer that is participating in the peer-to-peer network. When we mean a Lightning node, we mean a computer that is participating in the Lightning peer-to-peer network. Now, nodes have a variety of roles. Some nodes are special. There are subcategory of nodes, if you like, that also do mining. So miners run nodes, and they need to run nodes in order to receive transactions, validate them, and also have an up-to-date copy of the blockchain. So miners run nodes, and some of those nodes are effectively participating in mining. They're the interface that miners use to connect to the network, and that applies to Bitcoin. It also applies to Ethereum or ETH2. It applies to Monero. It applies to a variety of blockchains. But not all nodes mine. In fact, the vast majority of nodes do not mine. The estimates vary, but there are at any moment in time approximately 10,000 nodes on the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, of which only a few hundred are actually mining. And of those 10,000 nodes, we know of because they are listening in an advertised public address. That means they are reachable from the internet on port 8333. That happens to be the Bitcoin selected port. So if a node is reachable from the internet and it is advertising its presence, we can easily find it. There's about 10,000 of those, but that's not all. There's approximately, some estimates, about 100,000 nodes that are running behind firewalls and in such a way that they're not directly reachable, but they make their presence known by connecting to other nodes and not passively receiving connections. There are also a number of nodes that only connect through Tor, the onion routed network. So in any case, what does a node do? What a node does is it participates in the peer-to-peer network in order to maintain a valid copy of the blockchain. Some nodes maintain a full copy of the blockchain. Some nodes maintain what's called a pruned copy of the blockchain, where they have the most recent blocks and they have a copy of unspent transaction outputs, but they don't keep a full archival copy of the entire blockchain and all of its transactions since the Genesis block. Those are called prune nodes. And ones that keep the entire blockchain are often called full nodes or archival nodes. However, there is another way we use the word full node. There are nodes that participate only with a lightweight protocol that do not validate the blockchain, so-called SPV or simple payment verification or lightweight nodes, and then nodes that fully validate and receive transactions and blocks, and those we call fully validating nodes. So the term full node is a bit overloaded. Some people refer to a full node as one that has a full archival copy of the entire blockchain. Some people use the term full node to mean a fully validating node as compared to a lightweight node. So nodes have different roles. They come in different flavors, and that's just in Bitcoin, of course, and things may be different in other blockchains. So if you want to run a node, you would need to download software that implements the protocol. And there are a number of different flavors of that software. For example, for Bitcoin, there is the reference implementation, Bitcoin Core, which is written in C++. But there are also alternative implementations written in Go, as well as other languages. In Ethereum, for example, there are implementations of Ethereum nodes written in Go, such as Geth, as well as written in Rust. The Parity Ethereum client is an example of that, and several others. And in the Lightning Network, where the node has some additional interesting functions, there are implementations written in Go, such as LND, written in C, such as Blockstream's C Lightning, as well as written in Scala, such as Eclair, async Eclair. These are the most well-known ones, and people are also working on Rust implementations. In any case, people write these things in different programming languages for different reasons, and as long as they all speak the same protocol, they should be able to participate in consensus and remain in sync with the consensus of the network. And so let's go to the critical question: why would I want to run a node? Is it profitable? Under most circumstances, no, it is not profitable. In fact, it costs money to run a node. Why would you want to do that? You would want to run a node because of two reasons. One is for your own personal benefit. If you run a node, you can increase your privacy by not telling other nodes what addresses you're interested in every time you open your wallet. So instead of connecting to someone else's node to say, has this address been paid? And effectively telling them, I'm really interested in this address, which they may collect and analyze, correlate to your IP address and other things. Instead, you ask your node, which has a copy of all addresses and all transactions, hey, has this address been paid? Your wallet asks that question of your own node, and nobody's the wiser. Nobody knows that you are interested in that particular address because your node simply collects information about all addresses, all transactions, all blocks. The other key thing, of course, is that you are now trusting the authoritative source of your own node running the software that you've chosen and the consensus rules that you've chosen by extension. So if you say, I'm running Bitcoin Core version 021, what you're doing is you're choosing a set of consensus rules, and if you've done some tweaking of the parameters, you've also chosen the configuration you want to run, maybe departing slightly from the default, and that means that that is your authoritative answer to which is the real blockchain, what is the latest transaction on block, and have I been paid? You're not trusting someone else to give you that answer. You're not going onto blockchain.info and saying, hey, have I been paid? And trusting that the answer they give you is correct. So why do you run a node? In order to have an authoritative source of the truth according to the consensus rules that you chose by participating in the consensus process. And that's where the second benefit comes in. You are now a participant in the consensus process. That means that you are providing information to other nodes. You are helping by propagating transactions and blocks, and you are validating every transaction and block, and your software is not letting anything get past it. No lies, no fake transactions, no double spends, no incorrect blocks will get past the eagle eyes of your own node, which means that by validating everything and propagating only the truth, you are enforcing truth based on the consensus rules that you're running. And that is an important role in consensus. Consensus is not something that just miners do. Consensus is an emergent characteristic of multiple participants, and it's even more important. If you're simply running a node with no economic activity on it, it doesn't really matter. You can spin up 10,000 of those on Amazon, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. But if your node is feeding your wallet and you're using it to make decisions such as, have I been paid? You're not only choosing the consensus rules, you are choosing the consensus rules behind which you attach your economic activity. And that's powerful, especially at scale. All right, so that's the introduction, a great question to get things started. We will continue this conversation with more details as we go down. I'm going to talk about what it costs to run a node, because as I said, it's not profitable. It costs resources. I'm going to discuss how you do this, what kind of technical expertise it needs, what kind of equipment you might need, and ultimately you have to decide for yourself if this is worth the trouble. For many people, this is a fantastic learning experience. You learn a lot about computers, you learn about internet technologies, you might learn a bit about Linux subsystems, because often that's how people run nodes, or another operating system. You'll get better at understanding how Bitcoin works, or Ethereum, or Lightning, or whatever you're running. And before we get to this, because I don't think it has been asked in the Slido yet, I'm going to preemptively answer the following question. Do I run a node? And the answer is yes, I do. In fact, I run several. I run nodes on cloud computing infrastructure for experiments, for testing, and also to support various economic activities I do, like the shop that I run on my website. It accepts Bitcoin, it accepts Lightning, and I have nodes that run, public nodes that run in order to validate those transactions. I also run nodes at home. I carry nodes with me when I travel, and I set them up at various locations on various internet connections. And because I can turn off a node, turn it back on, and have it resync, I can do that. And I run nodes for Bitcoin, I run nodes for Ethereum, I run nodes for Lightning, I run nodes for Monero, and I've spun up and tested and tried probably about a dozen other blockchains by running a node. At the moment, I probably run maybe 8 or 10 nodes of different varieties across all of the little bits of infrastructure that I use, including several at home. So yes, I do it, and it helped me learn about the technology. All right, let's go to the next question. Next question comes from ZCSD-U89ZU8HFREW7ZDCSOIUZ74398. Do you mind if I call you 4398? Thank you, 4398, for this fantastic question. I assume then that when I have a node, I can look up my transaction on it instead of using a block explorer. So my question is, how do I look that data up on my node? Well, it depends. If you're simply running just the node software and you've done an important configuration step, which in the case of Bitcoin is to turn on transaction indexing, so you collect information about all transactions, not just the ones that are in the wallet, because you may not have a wallet on your node, then you use the command line interface within Bitcoin to do things like get raw transaction or get balance or things like that. So that's how you look up a transaction on Bitcoin, but that's complicated and rather technical. So in fact, most node packagers, node implementations that try to make it easy for you to run a node come with a bundle of other software that helps you run and use that node. So you're not just running Bitcoin Core, for example. You might be running Bitcoin Core, you might be running an Electrum server so you can connect lightweight wallets. You might be running a Lightning node, and you might also be running a lightweight block explorer of your own. And in fact, that's one of the nicest features of most of these node packages, which we'll talk about in a second. So how do you use it? You connect to the computer that's running your node, and you access over the web browser a block explorer that's running locally on that node that asks that node the questions like, what is the balance of this address? What are the inputs and outputs of this transaction? Show me the latest block, etc., etc. Effectively, you're running a local copy of the same type of software that Blockchain Info or Blockstream Info or BlockCypher or any of these other block explorers are running. And you can do the same thing with Ethereum, of course. You can run your own version of something like Etherscan on your local machine using your own node to look up that information. It's a bit more tricky. You can also do the same thing on the Lightning network and run a Lightning node, which also has some basic Explorer functionality, so you can look at what other nodes exist on the network and how are they connected and what channels do they have. Again, you can go as far as you want. So lately, a lot of these node packages come with apps. Effectively, they allow you to install all of this associated software that makes the experience of managing, maintaining, and using your node, connecting it to wallets, and all of the other things you might want to do with it easy. Otherwise, you're going to be buried in the command line trying to figure out which specific RPC command you have to type and what its parameters are, and see you on the Bitcoin Stack Exchange for your inevitable questions when you get stuck with that. It's definitely not easy. But listen, if you want to learn more about that, I've actually written about how to access, configure, compile, and run the type of node software in my book. So starting on, let's see, this is starting on page 31, you've got Bitcoin Core, the reference implementation. And I have the same information here in Mastering Ethereum, starting on page 41, Ethereum clients. So describing nodes is one of the things that you will find in these books, which of course you can get online for free on GitHub. So if you have further questions and you want to really go into the details, those are the books for that. So, you know, at first this may seem like something that is very, very complicated and will surely exceed your level of skill. And so that leads us to the next topic and question, which is the various tools, packages, and package managers that actually make it a lot easier to do, and that over the last couple of years have allowed hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people to run nodes at home. And I'm going to specifically focus on Bitcoin here because that's what's leading the game in terms of nodes. So Bitcoin and Lightning nodes are packaged in very convenient formats for people to use. That's very different from the kind of mentality and approach you see in Ethereum, where most of that has been taken up by infrastructure service providers like Infura and Alchemy that run nodes for you, and they're in hosted environments. A very different approach to this, whereas in Bitcoin, the approach is run your own and do it in a decentralized fashion, and we encourage newbies, we encourage non-technical people to learn just enough to be able to take that next step and be rewarded by that knowledge. So let's go into that question next. So Ian asks, what's your opinion on these easy to install full node packages? Umbrel has got a lot of attention lately, but also myNode, RoninDojo. These projects being open source, can we trust them as much as compiling Bitcoin Core from source? And so the answer is, first of all, you mentioned a couple here, Umbrel, myNode, RoninDojo. Another very, very popular one is Raspiblitz, which is for the Raspberry Pi, Raspi Blitz, R-A-S-P-I-B-L-I-T-Z, Raspiblitz, a very, very popular package that runs on a Pi 4. So listen, this is all fantastic because these things didn't even exist 2 or 3 years ago. You really had to get down into the weeds. So to answer the last question first, can we trust them as much as compiling Bitcoin Core from source? No. But does it really matter? Because effectively, you're trusting everybody else who's running a node for you if you're not running a node. So again, we have to think about this as climbing the staircase of sovereignty and self-custody. If you start at step 1 and you're using somebody else's custody for your wallet and somebody else's node for your wallet and somebody else's block explorer, then you're trusting all of these people to do consensus for you. Well, you can gradually escalate your level of sovereignty. Maybe the first step you take is taking custody of your keys. Maybe the second step you take is running more sophisticated wallet software with a hardware wallet behind it. And then maybe the third step you take is running your own nodes. Now, you could go and compile Bitcoin Core from source. But the difference in trust between that and just trusting some block explorer out there isn't that big. So I would say If you have the technical skill to run and compile Bitcoin Core and install all of the associated dependencies and other applications around it, by all means, go ahead and do that. But if that was the case, you could also simply compile the same software on Umbrel or Raspberry Blitz or myNode and just simply checksum the binary. You could make a build on your own computer. It's going to be so much easier for maintenance and upgrades to simply use the maintainer's version. But you can easily go and double check it. You could do an architecture build for Raspberry Pi on your laptop. And then with deterministic builds on Bitcoin Core, you could just print out the SHA-256 checksum on your screen, checksum on your Umbrel or your myNode or your Raspberry Blitz, and compare the two checksums. And if they're compiling the software to the same checksum and you're compiling it to the same checksum, bingo, you're done. And maybe your trust has increased a tiny bit, but you have verified. So trust but verify? Sure, absolutely, you can do that too. And you can also compile everything from scratch. But, you know, my goal here is to encourage people to take that first step. So to go to the first part, which is what is my opinion on these easy to install full node packages? I love them. I love them because even as a technical user, I use them. And you know why? I can compile Bitcoin Core for myself, and I can compile and run Electors, which is an Electrum Rust implementation of Electrum Server, and I can run the BTC Block Explorer, and I can run Nginx as a proxy front end, and I can run Tor and configure it with an onion address and all of that. I can do it. And instead of doing that, I'd rather be writing my next book or making an educational video. I don't have the time to be up to my neck in Linux system administration. I do it for fun, I enjoy it, I certainly can do it, but I don't want to be spending all of this time. And keep in mind, it's a lot of work because I have to anyway download, compile, and verify the latest version of Bitcoin Core. And I also do that across other chains. I want to make sure I understand what changes exist in the software, and I do all of these things. But do I really want to be tweaking all of the little dials to get the proxy to talk to the core server and to over Tor and get the routing and all of that other stuff and keep doing it after every maintenance and update release of 6, 7, 8 different pieces of software that are on different release schedules? No, hell no, I don't want to do that. So what do? I run Umbrel. I run myNode. I run Raspberry Blitz. I run RoninDojo. I haven't run all of those. Currently, I'm running Umbrel. Love it. I'm enjoying it a lot. But really, that's a personal choice. And I'm not saying it's better than the others. It really depends on what hardware you want to start with, what your budget is, what type of software you're comfortable with, how much hand-holding you need, etc. A lot of people I know who are at a very beginner level have had a lot of success with Umbrel and installing it very easily. A lot of people I know have had a lot of success with myNode, have had a lot of success with Raspberry Blitz. RoninDojo I am not that familiar with. I've seen it, I haven't used it extensively, and I don't know that many people who have used it, but that may just be because it's new. So, and the good news is that if you have the software, if you have the necessary hardware to run this, let's say a Raspberry Pi 4, you could try several of these distributions. One little caveat, of course, it's going to take you some time to sync the blockchain, and we'll talk about that in a subsequent question. So the bottom line, I love these packagers. They make my life easier, even though I know how to do it, and they make it possible for those who don't know the technical details to dip a toe, start on this journey, learn by doing, and really upgrade themselves to the next step of the self-sovereignty staircase and independent financial independence by running their own node. Love it. All right. Rules without rulers. Cheers. Now, the next few questions are going to be a bit simpler, and we're going to go through them a bit faster. So I did elaborate a lot in the first questions because we really needed to set the stage. So let's see if we can go a bit faster. Andreas, clearly a different one, asks, hi, is it necessary to get a second internet connection exclusively for my node, or is it safe to run it inside my home company's network regarding attacks and safety? Honestly, I don't think it is not necessary to get a second internet connection exclusive for your node. Absolutely not. And in fact, I'm not sure what you're protecting. Are you trying to protect your node from your other computers or your other computers from your node? Because quite honestly, a well-configured Raspberry Blitz or Umbrel that's running Linux is probably a lot less susceptible to various attacks, whereas your 12-year-old teenage sibling's Windows 10 computer that's running gaming software and a dozen toolbars on its browser or whatever the hell else it's running is probably going to be virus-ridden and plagued with a variety of malware and Trojans. So really, it's more about protecting your sensitive Bitcoin node from the attentions of your herpes-ridden Windows 10 machine. Bottom line, it doesn't really matter. These software distributions and the Bitcoin software is designed to run robustly in a hostile environment. It's not designed to run in a pristine, safe environment with dedicated connections. It's designed like a sewer rat to run in the open, hostile environment. It really gets attacked all the time, and that doesn't really matter. These are fairly robust. I wouldn't put a hot wallet on the node, just to be clear. I would use a hardware wallet connecting with software like maybe Electrum Desktop, Spectre Desktop, Wasabi Wallet, or some other software implementation, or even Ledger Live if you happen to like that then connects to your own node. So the keys stay on a hardware wallet. The actual transaction composing happens on a separate desktop wallet, and the node is there to do nodey things. I wouldn't put a hot wallet on, because then that really is asking for trouble. But you don't need to put the keys on the node. So one way you can protect, if you really want to go to extremes, you could set up a VLAN or DMZ. Most internet routers have the ability to isolate one part of your network from the rest of your network. Now, let's say, for example, you have this plugged in directly with an Ethernet cable to your local Wi-Fi router or access point. Or maybe you have one of those mesh networky things. I love those. I have those. Or you have some kind of access point that you've attached. Well, it's fairly easy to go in and set up a DMZ or demilitarized zone. Take that one computer, which is your node, isolate it from the rest of the network, and so it goes straight out on the internet over a VLAN without being seen by other computers on your network or without seeing the other computers on your network. And honestly, you're doing it more to protect the node from the other computers rather than the other way around. So under no circumstances do you need a separate internet connection. But if you really, really want to play with this stuff and go into more detail, you could gain some additional learning by doing some basic security things like setting up a DMZ and a VLAN and routing it straight out without touching the other networks. All right. How do I know which node my hardware wallet is connecting to first, my node or the wallet provider's nodes? And how do I get my hardware wallet to connect to my node by default? Well, if you haven't done something to make your hardware wallet connect to your node by default, it's connecting to a service provider. It's connecting to your wallet provider. So let's say you've got a Ledger with Ledger Live. Let's say you've got a Trezor and you're using the Trezor.io website, or you're using some other software to run that hardware wallet. It's connecting to the vendor's nodes, and that has some privacy implications. So if you want to control that more finely, what you do is you get software wallet, a desktop wallet, that doesn't contain keys, but allows you to configure and connect to your hardware wallet on one end and a node of your choosing on the other end. And there are dozens and dozens of software wallets for other blockchains too. So, for example, one of my favorites is Electrum. A lot of people like Wasabi for some of its privacy capabilities. People may use wallets on Android OS or iOS like Blockstream Green, and there's Spectre Desktop, and I just could keep going. And I don't want to really offer endorsements here. The bottom line is you have to figure out which wallet software can simultaneously interact with your brand of hardware wallet and allow you to configure the backend, the node, and what that involves exactly. So it's getting more standardized. Nowadays, a lot of these systems will be able to simply read a QR code and using that QR code connect to your node. And your node software will have a panel in the settings where it says, just give your wallet this QR code and it will configure it. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. And that's certainly something I would recommend. So for example, if I'm using Umbrel or Raspberry, myNode, most of those will show you a QR code and they'll tell you which nodes need which QR code and the software will be able to connect to that. All right. So we have another question which is related to the security question that came before. Ixaeon asks, does running a node at home make you a target? Is there a problem such as bad quality of your connection or something like that due to constant attacks? No, not really. We'll talk a bit, and I'm hoping maybe one of the next questions we're going to talk about is Tor. And we'll talk about how you do that in order to not present a public address and port to the entire network. And that will answer the question for Ixaeon. You know, this is probably, before we go to that question, this is probably a good point to say I'm going to take a little break, drink some coffee, and I'm going to show you a couple of things and annoy you with this little break. So first of all, I am very happy that we just published El Internet del Dinero Volumen 3. Which I pronounced with a terrible American accent there, El Internet del Dinero Volumen 3, the third volume of the Internet of Money. It's on the shop. And you can also get two very popular workshops on my website. The Introduction to Bitcoin and Open Blockchains now has almost 100 5-star reviews, and we publish all of the reviews regardless of the rating. And Choose Your Cryptocurrency Wallet, which helps you learn how to find the right wallet for yourself, which has 20 or more 5-star reviews, and you can learn about both of those. The first one's free, the other one is a paid one, and you can use the discount code NICNIC, which stands for Not Your Keys, Not Your Coins, for a 10% discount. Now, this type of education that is neutral, that is open, that is not sponsored by particular companies or products, that is not promoting various coins in order to get you to invest or anything like that, is made possible by the donations of my community builders and YouTube members who make it possible with their subscription for me to support my work, to support my staff, and to do quality work. So in order to thank them, I'd like to play you a little video where they tell you in their own words why they support this work.
I am a patron of Andreas because I came across his videos online, and that's how I learned about Bitcoin. So that's how I got introduced to Bitcoin.
I'm out tonight at a social event organised by Andreas as part of his Patreon support. We just had a few drinks in a pub, which is a Punch Tavern, downtown London. So it's been a really fun evening to meet a lot of like-minded people.
We should support the work Andreas is doing. He's doing so much in getting new people into Bitcoin and into Bitcoin education.
He's a great teacher. He can explain very complex topics in an easy to understand way. He's very honest, very precise, technically prepared, and intellectually honest. I think is his best characteristic.
Brings such clarity to a really complex subject, which is Bitcoin, and the industry around it.
It has been a very, very good inspiration for me, and every Bitcoin I'm giving to him, it will be very well used in helping others understand Bitcoin, and I think it will improve the world at some point.
Being a patron, I get to meet Andreas, and that's why I love being a patron. I'm going to continue being a patron.
I think it's just a good thing. If you're interested in learning new things and also want to support the Bitcoin community, then you got to be a patron.
Being a Patreon makes you feel special. You can attend to his live Q&A sessions. You can meet him at happy hours. It's really great, totally worth it. I'm very, very enthusiastic of being a Patreon.
I'd like him to be able to produce his great and valuable content in the future, free from advertising, and just with the help of his Patreons, and that's why I'm supporting him on Patreon.
Remember the days before pandemic when we used to be able to go out and have a good time and do happy hours all over Europe? That little clip was produced during the European tour in May of 2019, and I'd like to thank many of the people who appear in that video, my good friends, patrons, supporters, and partners in this endeavor. People like Matt, Anita, Enrico, who you saw there and also see on the chat every now and then. Thank you so much for all of your support and help. Let's go to the next question and get going again. Davide asks, hi Andreas, what do you think about running a Bitcoin node behind Tor? I already have a normal full node hosted in my home local area network, and I know that Tor is about anonymity, but I don't get which use cases would benefit from Tor. So great question, Davide. So this relates to another question we got about whether running a node makes you more likely to get attacked, or it makes more likely that your IP address will get scanned and people will know that you're running a node, etc., etc. This all depends on the configuration you have. And quite honestly, years and years of running nodes at different locations on the public internet with open ports, I have not really seen significant attacks. Every now and then people port scan and they try to probe and someone tries to connect to the RPC interface and they don't get anywhere. So not really a problem. Especially if you've configured things correctly, or if your network is kept up to date, if your wireless router is updated, if your firewall, if you have one, is updated, if your computer is updated, etc., etc. But there are some benefits to running Tor. So what Tor does is it acts as a type of whole internet VPN, a virtual private network which doesn't exit at a single predictable point, but instead will exit at different points all over the internet, and in some cases doesn't exit because the nodes that are connecting to your node, as well as the clients that are connecting to your node, are also using Tor. So all of the communication is over Tor. It's effectively a fully encrypted point-to-point and peer-to-peer network that people can use entirely as an overlay over the internet. Tor stands for the onion router. Well, it doesn't really. Tor stands for Tor. It's a backronym, but originally it used to mean the onion router, and it's because it uses a technique called onion routing to bounce packets across the internet that are encrypted not just end to end, but also hop to hop, so that any hop in between doesn't know where the packet is coming from and where it is going. Onion routing is also used inside the Lightning Network for similar reasons. But enough with that. Let's get to the point of Davide's question. There are some significant benefits to running your Bitcoin node and all of the associated services over Tor. In fact, many of the node packages that you can download and run fairly easily that do all of these things for you not only run Tor, they default to Tor, and they don't have an option to run without Tor. And there's good reasons for that, because you can easily configure your wallets to use Tor to communicate to your own node, even if you're like 3 feet away from it in the same room. That's an option. It also means that all of the services that are presented to the outside world by your node are not presented as accessible IP addresses and ports that can be associated either with Bitcoin functioning or with your exact location. Keep in mind, if your node is advertising, hey, this is my IP address on the network, then someone with access to the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network that's enumerating IP addresses can look at that. And if you do a reverse DNS on most internet service providers, what you're going to get as the name behind your super secret IP address is Baltimore 74 -313-connection72.comcast.net. And that pretty much puts a pin in your very specific neighborhood, if not your specific house. And anybody who is able to collect information from across the internet will very easily, for example, Facebook, Google, Apple, your service provider, and everybody else, will very easily be able to identify that the same IP address that is presenting Bitcoin here is also the same IP address that is buying stuff for Bob Smith on Amazon, that is also the same IP address that is posting as Bobby Smith on Facebook, and whose relationship just changed to single. Probably is spending too much time configuring the node. Anyway, whereas if you're running your node over Tor, none of that information is going out. Your node will present a hidden onion service, which looks like a long alphanumeric string on a .onion domain, which isn't a real domain, and can only be accessed over the Tor network. It is near impossible to even identify the precise location of such services and figure out exactly where that is. In fact, under most circumstances, it's impossible to know which continent that onion address even is on. Unless you're trying to compromise the entire Tor network, which takes really state-level effort. So, useful. And a follow-up question we saw from Alien, do you need Tor if you run a VPN? Kinda. One of the things about VPNs that is a bit of a disadvantage is that when you route your traffic through a VPN, your VPN provider is now your internet service provider. They know who you are, they know what you're transmitting, and they also may be collecting information about all of that. So you've just replaced Comcast with a VPN provider, and granted, you know, at least some VPN providers don't directly work for the NSA, hint, hint, but many do. So a better answer would be Tor is a decentralized VPN. Why would you use a centralized VPN if you can use a decentralized VPN? That's the way to think about it. All right, let's check in the chat and see how people are doing. Could we please have an emoji storm? I would like to see all of the new custom emojis and a demonstration of excitement from those people who are YouTube members. Listen, people. These YouTube members are making an investment every month in my channel, and all they get is some silly damn custom emojis. Give them some props. Give them some props, because I really appreciate all of the support that they give me, and they make it possible for me to do exciting things, one of which is create silly custom emojis. So they've earned it. They really have. Honestly, they're overpaying for it, but don't tell them that. Yes, we have reached that point in the show where emoji storms are happening. Let's go to the next question. My name is optional asks, what would a more advanced node setup look like? For example, if I would like my node to be able to do atomic swaps with other cryptocurrencies over Lightning, what could a more advanced node do? You know, optional, there's really nothing a node does that is more advanced than another node. As they say, it's not about the node, it's about how you use it, my friend. The node simply follows the peer-to-peer protocol and keeps a local copy of the blockchain. It might have some associated applications. For example, an Electrum server that indexes all UTXO scripts. It might have a block explorer that also helps you visualize transaction and block information in a nice web interface. It might have a Lightning node, which allows you to set up channels, close channels, make payments, create invoices, basically everything a Lightning node could do. But effectively, a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node just implement the corresponding protocol. Now, you can do atomic swaps with any node. Any node that follows the Bitcoin protocol can implement an atomic swap. In order to do that, you have to connect to it a wallet that will produce the necessary transactions to do that. Just like you can do a coin join with any node that implements the Bitcoin protocol if your wallet supports coin joins. So if you're running, for example, Wasabi or Samurai, and you tell it, hey, connect to this node, then when you do a coin join in Wasabi, it's going to collect the necessary information about UTXOs, construct the transaction, and broadcast it on that node. Now, there are other functions that it's doing. Those functions might be also running a coin join server. For example, it might be running the peer-to-peer network to do something like Samurai Dojo, which is a coin join implementation that is decentralized and uses a different peer-to-peer network. Sure, you could do that too, and you could tell it to connect to your node. You could even run Samurai Dojo inside your node software so that it's permanently running as a service on your network. You can load all kinds of services. It's just a matter of resources, it's a matter of skill, and it's a matter of how much time you want to dedicate to making this better and better. It's a bit like asking, how many aftermarket mods can I do to my car? And the answer is, oh boy. Once you get started, that is definitely a rabbit hole, and there is no limit to how far down that rabbit hole you can go. But really, it's not about the node. It's about the packaging of associated services that you run alongside the node. I haven't mentioned Casa node, which I noticed in the chat, only because I don't come across it very often. I don't know if they're even still selling them. They used to be very, very popular. Most of the ones I'm talking about are not nodes that you buy from somewhere ready-made, but they're nodes that you construct by buying hardware, which you can buy, consumer-level hardware on Amazon, and then downloading and installing special software on these. So this is not a product. When I'm talking about nodes, they're not products, although products exist. There was a company called BitNodes that sold nodes that you could install. The Casa, of course, used to sell nodes. I don't know that they still do. They might. But Umbrel, Raspberry Blitz, myNode, RoninDojo, etc., these are not nodes that you go buy and install, although you can buy kits. Instead, what they are is software distributions, packages that you install on consumer-level hardware, which is compatible with that particular set of software, often a Raspberry Pi computer. Next question. Giovanni asks, hi Andreas, what would one need to set up a Lightning node? What advantages does it offer? Do you need a Lightning node in order to do Lightning transactions? All right, let's start from the last question first. Giovanni, you do not need a Lightning node to do Lightning transactions if you do so in a custodial way, meaning that just like you don't need a node or even a wallet to do Bitcoin transactions, you could use Coinbase or Binance or another exchange and use their wallet. You don't need it for Lightning either. However, that would be a custodial Lightning solution. In between that would be a light node for Lightning, a light Lightning node, a lightweight Lightning node. It's very difficult to say. A lightweight Lightning node, which uses the neutrino protocol. So this is basically like a cut down version of a Lightning node, which does not need a full Bitcoin node running alongside it. This is a very convenient way to run a Lightning node because it means you can run essentially a fully participating peer-to-peer Lightning node that controls your own keys, a non-custodial or self-custody Lightning node, on even an Android phone. In fact, I do, and you can do that. The Lightning node from Lightning Labs, the Lightning wallet from Lightning Labs, for example, is a neutrino-based lightweight Lightning wallet that runs on your own Android OS. However, if you really want to have control, just like everything else, then one of the ways you can do this is by running a full Bitcoin node and a full Lightning node on the same little Raspberry Pi at home. And this is a very common implementation. In fact, almost all of the node implementations we see that come as packages, I mentioned before, myNode, Raspberry Blitz, Umbrel, etc., also have Lightning as part of the package. So either they install it automatically or you click and say add this app in the web interface and you add the Lightning app and then it starts a Lightning node. You've already done most of the heavy lifting by running a Bitcoin node. You're already going to need to have 340 gigs of data downloaded, synced, verified for your Bitcoin node. So the Lightning node then on top of that is relatively lightweight. And it's a good addition because it really expands what you can do. Now you have a permanently connected, internet reachable Lightning node that can both send and receive Lightning payments, and you can connect a variety of Lightning wallets like Zap and Zeus and Phoenix and a bunch of others to your own node and use that to do. You could also use it to backend other services like Sphinx, which is a Lightning-based chat messaging project that I was just able to install for the first time a couple days ago. Fun times. We're all learning, right? So what do you need to set up a Lightning node? Pretty much what you need to set up a Bitcoin node plus a tiny bit more. Really, most of the heavy lifting is done for Bitcoin. And so if you have the necessary hardware and you install a Bitcoin node, adding a Lightning node is relatively easy on top of that. And if you're using one of these package managers, it's a one-click install if it's not already there. Ready to go to the next question. I'm going to quickly check in the chat and see if people are having fun. Yes, how is Umbrel spelt? Look for get Umbrel, 1L, and that's how it's spelt. I believe it's getumbrel.com. Raspberry Blitz, I'll spell that for you too. And myNode, you can find all of these. Is there any advantage of running 2 or more Lightning nodes, balancing privacy, anything? MB asks this question. It's a great question, MB. I don't know, really. Not really. Not for the home user. I run 2, 3, 4, 5 Lightning nodes at the moment, but that's only because I'm doing a variety of things, including I have networks of private channels, I'm doing rebalancing across multiple nodes, I have nodes that are used for my shop, I have other nodes that I use for private communications, I have other nodes I use for testing various bits of software. I'm running nodes by 3 different companies that make them or projects, as well as 3 different programming languages. Etc., etc. And really that's the kind of setup that you have if you're running a home-based Lightning laboratory. More than 1 LN node, no, not really necessary. Unless you want to learn, unless you want to experiment, unless you want to do research. 1 is more than enough to do what you need to do. Let's see. Should I run a separate node to set up Lightning channels? What is happening on my node when I initiate a Lightning channel? No, Anonymous, you don't need a separate node. In fact, that's extra work. You would run a Lightning node on the same computer as you're running your Bitcoin node so that it can monitor the Bitcoin blockchain. So Lightning is a layer 2 technology which requires access to and the ability to monitor the Bitcoin blockchain to look for special transactions that construct, open funds, and close payment channels. So Lightning Network works through this concept of a payment channel. It's almost like running a VPN on top of Bitcoin, with the endpoints of that VPN being specific, specially constructed multi-sig transactions that occur on the Bitcoin blockchain. These anchor transactions establish a payment channel between Lightning participants. Then the participants exchange signed but unpublished transactions between them that never go on the blockchain. And then finally, one or both of the participants may close the channel by publishing a final transaction that spends that multisig to each of the participants in the correct level of balance. And if that transaction was published in a nefarious way, there might be a penalty transaction published to punish the cheater. There's all kinds of things. Well, in order for the Lightning Network to be able to do that, it has to be able to not only create transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain, but also monitor the Bitcoin blockchain for transactions to see if the other party has tried to publish a commitment or state or close the channel or even cheat and take action immediately. And so for that reason, your Lightning node runs on top of a Bitcoin node or in parallel to a Bitcoin node. It needs access to a Bitcoin node. And so what is happening on your node when you initiate a Lightning channel? It's creating a transaction. And that transaction is broadcast to the Bitcoin blockchain. It takes 6 confirmation before it's trusted by the 2 channel partners. And once that's done, you can do thousands and thousands and thousands of Lightning payments back and forth on that channel, or even forward other people's payments over that channel with your Lightning node without making another transaction on the Bitcoin network. Okay, give me a second here. And a great question to wrap things up, because we will be wrapping things up with this one. Anonymous asks, what type of computing power is needed to run my own node? Are the specs available for the minimum requirements? As always, I can only assume biggest and fastest is best, but I really have no idea. This is a fantastic question. It really depends on how patient you are, but you would be surprised at how simple the specs are. You can run a node on very, very basic hardware. For one thing, a lot of people will use an old computer, an old laptop. The specs that you want, the minimum requirements will exist online, and often people will give you a shopping list so you can go on Amazon or some other retailer and purchase the necessary equipment. You should be estimating a total cost of not more than $250 for everything. That includes, for example, a Raspberry Pi, a heatsink, a wireless a wireless network adapter, USB network adapter, a hard drive. Usually you would want to get 1 terabyte or more, possibly 2, just for future expansion, so you don't have to upgrade it in the future. And maybe a little screen so that you can have your node display some stats for you. That's always nice. I don't have a screen on my node. I run it on an Atom PC, which has Wi-Fi and Ethernet, etc. An Atom PC is an x86 computer. It has a little SD card built into it, and I've put an external hard drive. The PC was $102. The external drive was $85 for a 2 terabyte drive, magnetic, not solid state. It's not particularly fast. It doesn't have a lot of CPU. You may want to get enough RAM, otherwise things are going to get very sluggish depending on what you're running. I would recommend a minimum of 4 gig. 4 gig is good enough. 2 gig can work. It's going to be very sluggish. 4 gig is better. If you can get 8, that would be even better, but you don't really need to splurge. So I'm running an x86 with 4 gig Atom computer. I think it's a Minis Forum, which is a very common little mini computer. They often use these as media centers. It's the kind of thing that people will hang behind their TV to use it as a little streaming service. A lot of people run Plex, for example, or things like that on it. But what I'm doing is I'm running Linux, and on top of Linux, I'm running Umbrel on it. It has 4 gigs, and I've got an external USB drive that I connected to it, and that's it. That's really it. Less than $200 total cost, and I'm up and running. I've chosen to connect mine via a hard Ethernet port and cable, just because it's more reliable than Wi-Fi and faster to configure. So that's what I do. Really not a big system. Now, keep in mind, it took 4 or 5 weeks to fully sync and index the entire blockchain and all of its transactions and the full UTXO and script set on the Electrum server, and finally be ready for me to fully use. Until then, it was just every day synchronizing 71.3%, the next day synchronizing 71.6%. And that's because verifying all of the signatures from the Genesis block takes CPU. These things are not very CPU powerful. The initial block download takes 100 times more power than simply running it once you've synced. So it was 100% CPU, full memory, swapping a bit to disk, really struggling, and it still took 5 weeks to sync. Not because I didn't have the bandwidth, I have fiber, but because its CPU was struggling. But here's the interesting thing. Once it was done, because I was patient, I mean, I just forgot about it. Once it was done, now it's running at, 5-10% CPU. It's got free RAM. It's perfectly happy. It's chugging along. It's no longer hot. And it's very much capable of maintaining the sync. If you want to do Ethereum, you would need, depending on how you run it, again, you could do it with a Raspberry Pi. If you wanted to run an archival node on Ethereum, you will need, I think it's at last count, 2.5 terabytes. And there are some bugs that caused denial of service back in the early days, around 2015. So you may want to do an accelerated sync for that early stage, or it can take a couple of months to fully sync. But then again, most people don't run archival nodes on Ethereum, and if you simply run a normal implementation of Geth, a 1 terabyte disk is more than enough, and you can sync that up quite fast. Parity as well, you can sync that up and be up to date quite fast, because you just sync the state and not the full copy of the blockchain. Where do you find the and by the way, Lightning, by comparison, is incredibly lightweight. Lightning really doesn't need much at all. In fact, one of the heaviest components on these nodes, in my opinion, is an Electrum personal server. An Electrum server is basically an add-on to the Bitcoin node that creates a full index of all of the transactions, including all of the scripts, the Bitcoin scripts that are used by those transactions, that allows any kind of lightweight wallet and any kind of block explorer to query by transaction ID, but also by address, and calculate balances and look up old transactions and all of that. So that requires, at last count, I believe 600 gigs for the full index. So together with your Bitcoin node, you're going to get close to 1 terabyte once it's finished indexing, and that can take, as I said, 4 or 5 weeks on a small computer. Where do you find full specs? All of the ones I talked about before, Umbrel, Raspberry Blitz, myNode, etc., have on their websites minimum and recommended specifications. Many of them have lists of specific things you can buy and even links, probably affiliate links to Amazon, so you can go and buy them there, and they get a little gift from you. Which, since they built all the software, go ahead and give them a little gift. I think that's appropriate. All right. And one more question that is not a question, but people want me to thank my producer for creating all these wonderful questions, or at least that's what I think they're writing on their little board, because I can't tell. So maybe they need to elaborate a bit more. I do not understand the pantomime going on. Let's see what else we have here. I'm just going to look in the chat and see if there are any follow-up questions. A lot of people asking for a lot of people are asking for a Node workshop. That's a great idea. We should definitely consider that. And sorry, my mic just fell off my lap. We should definitely consider that. And let's go to the final question. Not a question, just love. You are awesome. Thank you for everything you do. In my circles, you are simply known as the Greek. Yes, I am the Greek. And unlike most Greeks, I do not like tzatziki or feta or Greek yogurt. And so that makes me a heretical Greek. I am very, very sorry. My Greek citizenship has been revoked. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, we have more than 12 million views so far. If you like this video, share, like, and subscribe, and watch one of the other 600 ad-free videos. Just today, we launched episode 451 of the Speaking of Bitcoin podcast, which has been running since 2013, with the topic, Is This Bitcoin's AOL Moment?, where we talk about institutional investors entering Bitcoin. So I hope you enjoy that. And once again, thank you all for coming to this Node live stream today. Thank you for the excellent questions. I hope you learned something. More importantly, I hope you try this. I know lots of people who were paralyzed by the possibility of embarking on running their own node, who describe themselves as technophobes and non-technical and newbies, and they're running nodes now. And they're very, very, very happy and have a great sense of accomplishment because they reached for a goal that seemed far away. And when they accomplished that goal, they got a great sense of satisfaction. So I will recommend that you try, because it's something that will give you a lot of satisfaction, but also, even if you don't succeed, you will learn so much about internet technologies, about operating systems, about building computers and hardware. So thank you so much. A lot of thanks to all of the YouTube community members for joining me today. A lot of thanks to those who helped with moderating the chat, and also to my patrons. And that's all I have for you. I will see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Hi, I'm Andreas Antonopoulos. If you enjoyed that video, consider that it takes a lot of work to produce open and free content that can be shared with everyone around the world. This isn't sponsored by some company. It's not promoting a product or an altcoin or some kind of investment scheme. My goal is simply to help explain the technology of Bitcoin and open blockchains to as many people as possible in a neutral way that focuses really on the incredible possibilities that this technology brings us. If you'd like to support that mission, subscribe to my channel and go on patreon.com/aantonop, where you can participate and help me build better content for more people. Thank you.